Hello.
Well, good evening, Graham. I'm sorry for the delay. It's technology is threatening. It's not even snowing yet to complicate matters. Firstly, just a health report. How are you feeling?
Pretty shocking. Not as bad as it was on Tuesday when I got sent home
you
from work, but not good.
I was curious because you got sent home from work. Now, of course, in the modern era where everyone works from home, it'd be quite interesting to be sent home from work when you would be already at home. So be sent from home to home.
Well, no, because my connectivity at work is rubbish, so I can't really work at home. And also, I can't really work just on a laptop. I need the screen and the keyboard and the mouse and blah, blah, blah. It's all a big hassle. And also, there's no point in being a Harrogate journalist writing about Harrogate and sitting in your little spare room in your little cul-de-sac. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Anyone would think you want to be a journalist in the proper tradition of going out seeing people. That'll never.
It's a bit old school.
It certainly is. Now, good evening. Why am I coughing? Don't know. Now, you've had a Fairport Convention with Fairport Convention. What, Simon Nicol or someone else?
No, Simon Nicol, the guitar player, is the last founding member still in the band. He joined in '67 when he was just 16 years old, along with Richard Thompson and Ashley Hutchins. And the Fairport Convention, as you know, legendary folk rock band. They're still touring, and they're coming to Harrogate in early February.
Where are they playing this time?
So, they're all Hall and Harrogate, so it's a big venue. So they're still impressively doing well. But I interviewed him on the phone thanks to the Harrogate Advertiser.
Yeah.
And he was a great bloke, but I think he got the wrong end of the stick when I was interviewing him.
That never, Graham, has happened with you, with anybody I can think of. So in the case of how did you manage to upset him? Sorry, how did you manage to upset him?
It's easy for you to say, Charles.
I don't know what's going wrong. I'm actually far better. I'm far better than I've been, so I've no idea where I'm getting this tickling cough.
He was a very chatty fellow. You would think, he was a young guy. But because he's very chatty, he didn't wait for you to finish your questions. So I had a long, ambling question early on, in which I referenced the bootleg Beatles, who I've interviewed all the John Lennons have ever had. Now, the bootleg Beatles are still going strong, having formed in 1980, but they have no original members. I was going to cross-reference that to Fairport Convention, how you can still be a great band and still keep going without hardly any original members. But he didn't let me get to that point. So then he started talking about how Fairport Convention weren't a tribute band. And I thought, wait a minute, I never said you were a tribute band. But he hadn't given me the chance to get to that point in the question. So it went well. He said it was a good interview at the end of it. He said it was really enjoyable, etc., etc., etc.
I think the message.
I kept wondering why he was going about tribute bands. Then I realised because
you did a long-winded question. Fatal thing in journalism to ask a long-winded question, of which I'm often guilty. And what tends to happen at the end of it is someone goes, "Yes, that was a really good point. I should have put it that way myself." And you'd think after all these years of journalism, I would remember to keep questions short.
Well, no, because I refuse to knuckle down, buckle down, and ask obvious questions. You'll never get me doing that. So I'm not going to do that. It's just that when you got someone who's bright and articulate like Simon Nicol, he just doesn't wait for you to get to the point. So he leaps in, which makes for a good interview. But on this occasion, he got the wrong mistake. But he was a great bloke in there. At one point, he said, we've never been slaves to our past in Fairport Convention. And then he paused and says, and it helps we never had any hits, which I thought was a good line.
Who is with him in the current lineup that we might know?
Well, most of the band are quite stable. I think most of the band's been there for at least 15 years. But on the tour coming up, because the drummer just recently left the band, he's got Dave Mattox back, who, of course, joined Fairport Convention in 1969, so he's almost original.
Exactly.
So there'll be two almost originals in the current lineup of Fairport Convention touring live.
Now, they run their own festival, of course, as well, don't they? Crop Ready. Crop Ready, is that how it's pronounced? Not Crop Ready, which is an instruction to farmers. Crop Ready. Crop ready. Start baling. Yes. Start thrashing.
Oven Ready Festival.
Which I mean, it's as successful as a festival can be within that folk world, and I don't mean that in a negative way either, because actually, you know, that we've seen just how successful Kate Rusby's festival up here, Under the Stars, has become. There's a definite, and we know the long-running Cambridge Folk Festival. There's a great following for this. So and of course, it's fair to say probably actually their festival's got the greatest of all the followings in the folk world.
Well, it helps that they've always had quite Catholic tastes. I mean,
yes,
the band itself was always quite open to change and open to new ideas and open to different forms of music. So they've never been a straight folk band, and hence that helps the festival itself.
Well, they're often credited with creating. I did say to him, yeah. I mean, did you talk to him about, you know, because they're associated with in many ways creating folk rock, a sort of genre within folk? Did you chat to him about that?
Well, no, because they've constantly evolved. And if you listen to their 1960s albums, all of which are highly regarded, and early 70s ones, no two albums sound the same. So I know he says they invented folk rock, which is partly true, but they didn't invent one sound. In fact, he agreed with me that the reason they were still going strong after all these decades is because they don't stand for one thing. They don't represent one sound. So to call them folk rock's almost like to underestimate them, really.
Yes, it's to pigeonhole in a too simple way. While on the subject of folk musicians, I interviewed Jon Boden. Jon, of course, recently played with Bellowhead at the Harrogate Convention Centre, the 10th anniversary tour that they did. And at this time, he's going to be playing with the Remnant Kings, and they're going to be playing at the Wardrobe in Leeds. And he's done a series of post-apocalyptic albums, the third of which, Last Mile Home, came out last year. But part of it is to look at the thought of songs that would survive an apocalypse. So songs that are strong enough, the kind of kryptonite factor, that they would actually survive. But he also points out actually the real meaning of apocalypse, if one looks in the Bible, it is a revelation, and it is to pull the lid off something and then to reveal something new. So maybe what he's saying with these songs is that they would in fact be shown in some kind of new light if the apocalypse were ever to happen. But it got me thinking, Graham, can you think of songs that would survive any apocalypse?
I would suggest Going Underground.
That's an excellent. I like now. You see that lateral thinking, but spot on.
Well, I think that if there truly was an apocalypse in the accepted sense of the word rather than original meaning, I think the last thing that would actually matter for quite a long time was music. I mean, I'm sure it would come back eventually, but I think it'd be a hell of a situation. I don't think box sets would matter anymore.
Yeah, when it comes to what would you save in an apocalypse, well, you don't have time to save anything because you're a goner. However, Graham, I think music would survive.
To get wiped out, but I'm going to save the Revolver remixed version.
We are innately musical as a species, so music would survive in some form. Surely, it would just start again if necessary.
Yeah, but once you could actually, once people could feed themselves on that and get shelter, etc., I'm sure they'd start the music again.
Yeah, I realise the priority is not to learn a Jimi Hendrix riff as soon as you've survived the apocalypse. I get that.
Yeah, on the plus side of any apocalypse, there'd be probably no more Ed Sheeran, which would obviously be good.
Graham, he gets mentioned ever so often in unexpected ways. Sometimes you give him a bit of grace. More often than not, you just make cheap jokes at his expense.
These are cheap jokes. You're right.
I would remind you that he is not the biggest ginger-selling artist of the moment.
I am definitely not anti-gingerist. The colour of his hair is relevant to me. I just don't like his music very much. I'm
just merely pointing out that I thought there were going to be loads of spare copies of Spare, but it turns out to be a huge hit, the Gingerist book.
Well, yeah, he sounds like he's telling as close to the truth as you could possibly tell by someone who's been inside the royal family. So I'm sure it makes interesting reading, but it's a bit like the royal family doesn't really work if it's open and honest, because it's about mystery and power.
Yes.
So there needs to be a bit of cloak across it for it to work. So while I admire the fact he's willing to be this open, it's not going to do him or the royal family any good. Not that he has to do the royal family any good. I mean, if he wants to just cause trouble. It's totally up to him. But I'm not going to knock him. But at the end of the day, I don't see where this is going, really.
No, but we've seen. We were talking only last week about rock biographies, and this is a different biography that's rocking in a different way, and maybe some rock and roll behaviour within it.
I think if Harry had got Barbara Sharon, who wrote that excellent book Access All Areas that we talked about recently, to write his autobiography, I think he wouldn't be in trouble. I think it'd just be a nice little potboiler.
Absolutely. Now, Graham, lo and behold, last time we, after our Chris Helm special, week before, we were looking at Terry Hall's passing, and we're getting quite a list of deaths already in the early pages of this year, of which obviously Jeff Beck, who his last gig in England that he played, he did go on and play elsewhere, of course, was here in York at the Barbican when he played with. Who did he play with, Graham? Little quiz for you. Who did he play with?
I don't know, because I'm not a massive Jeff Beck fan. I'm nothing against him, but I wasn't a huge.
No,
I wasn't that interested.
No.
But
well, it was, of course, it was the tour with Johnny Depp straight after his court case, and so Johnny Depp played Newcastle, played York. Say again. Say again, Graham.
Nothing to do. Was it the Hollywood Vampires, Johnny Depp's rock band?
No, it was Jeff Beck's band, and so I think Johnny Depp joined us for as many as 8 songs per night at the gigs, but the last of which in Britain was at York Barbican. But Graham, you want to mention in passing, well, a couple of deaths. Obviously, Lisa Marie Presley passing, and then one of the Bachmans. Now, there's two R Bachmans. There's Robbie and there's Randy.
And it's Robbie. A third.
Oh, there's 3. Are they all? I can't remember.
All 3 members have at one point been a member of the Bachman Turnover Drive band, the Canadian rock band.
It's Robbie that's passed away, isn't it?
The drummer has died, and they're most famous for "You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet," that big 1974 hit single. Which I remember the singles charts then as being appallingly bad in general. I remember thinking like, "Oh, You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, that's a good track," in a sea of like middle of the road tosh at the time. And of course, Smashy Nicey, played by Harry Enfield and Paul Whitehouse, they were always playing You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet.
That was their anthem.
Yeah. But sadly, with the drummer dead, it basically means that BTO just become TO.
But so has Randy died already then, the lead singer and guitarist? Is he already gone?
Very, very good point. I suppose since Randy's there, it still remains BTO, you're right. And I'm sure there's a third Bachman.
We'll have to look it up, but Randy, obviously, lead singer and songwriter. Yeah, I mean, maybe people would be quick to call them one-hit wonder, but they were one big hit, and it was a heck of a wonder of a song. Exactly. It stood out in its own way because they came from, we didn't know them at all as a band. We knew nothing about them, no history, and they came up with a top 2 hit in You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. Sadly, it never really lived up to that. That was the moment. You ain't seen nothing yet. Well, actually, yes, you have, because nothing ever matched it. Nothing ever matched it.
Like, except in America, they had quite a few hit singles in America, but in Britain,
not over here. Not over here.
Glory. You're right. You have seen something, and that was it.
Pretty much over here. Now, when we know we're getting old, Graham, when not only Elvis has died, but now, bless him, his one child, Lisa Marie, has died too. That's a sign of us all getting older, isn't it? That, bless her, Lisa Marie's passed away now.
That is terrible. I mean, that really makes you feel old, I'll tell you.
It does. It does. Yeah.
She was quite a successful musician herself, especially in America. Had genuine hits and was quite highly rated, although she only did 3 albums. But she's probably more famous for marrying Michael Jackson briefly, and then even more briefly marrying Nicolas Cage, the actor, which turned out to be a bit of a disaster.
That turned out to be an uncaged moment. At one point, Michael Jackson owned the Beatles catalogue, the Michael Jackson catalogue, and the Elvis Presley catalogue, I think, when he married Lisa Marie Presley. Would that be right? That he had all 3 somehow under? I might be wrong there, because he bought the Beatles, didn't he?
Well, yeah. So he's bought the Beatles and he's married a Presley. So he's
married a Presley.
He's got a lot there, isn't
he? He certainly has.
But we were actually, and this is not meant to be funny. It's not meant to be some sort of joke that Frankie Boyle would tell in terrible taste. But we have been inside Lisa Marie Presley, haven't we?
Well, we have been to Graceland. I think we need to explain.
Yeah, but they were inside the plane. And what was the plane called? What was Elvis's tour plane called?
Oh, yes, it was. It was
Lisa Marie Presley.
It was called Lisa Marie Presley. This is true.
So
true. And of course, by the time that we went to Graceland, the estate was in her control and her hands, wasn't it? So, in two ways, graphic as your image was there, Graham, and maybe a little unnecessary.
Completely awful. Not even slightly funny.
What was your? By the way, this is very much tangential. What was your favourite room at Graceland?
Well, the jungle room was great, wasn't it?
That was the one. That was the room, wasn't it?
It was so tacky, but it's sort of like the sort of place you like to have a few drinks and put music on the jukebox. It was quite small as well. The amazing thing about
that was the surprise.
The rooms are all small. There's not a single big room really in Graceland.
No, but all the televisions in the one room. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Elvis was easily bored, obviously, wasn't he?
Easily bored. Now, Graham, we've got a more serious discussion point tonight, which is the new book on the Russian Civil War by Antony Beevor. When it comes to starting a year with some light reading and something entertaining, no, Graham's gone in deep. I mean, there's a Russian war that's troubling rather more of us at the moment, Graham, than the Russian Civil War. But I'm just wondering what persuaded you to think. Maybe that's what's nudged you into looking at the Civil War. What on earth has made you want to read about this?
Well, first of all, Antony Beevor is like one of the world's biggest selling military historians because he managed to combine fresh research, a great marshalling of information, but also he humanizes the whole thing. It all gets down to the brass tacks of what it was like to be a soldier or a civilian, etc., etc. So I've read all these books like Stalingrad, Berlin, D-Day, Civil War, Ardennes, Arnhem, the Battle for the Bridges. Everyone's a bestseller. He's a great writer. So obviously I was looking forward to Russia, Revolution and Civil War, 1917 to 1921.
Yes.
Which is published by Wiedenfeld, Feld and Nicholson. And noticed a strange development in this book, which you'd never previously had, although there were signs in the Arnhem book. There's a lot of emotion in his writing. And normally is a well-educated historian, he's quite dispassionate. And this book is quite frankly a bloodbath. It's I've only read about 170, 190 pages, and it's just like page after page of brutal atrocities on all sides. The White Russians, the Red Russians, the Bolsheviks, the non-Bolsheviks, the Cossacks, the non-Cossacks. The whole lot of them just doing barbaric things to each other the whole time. And it's almost like it's his Ukraine war book where he's trying to highlight how barbaric the Russians are, but it probably can't be the case because he must have started writing this before the Ukraine war started. Because you don't bash out a book like this in a year or so. But it does read like he just is disgusted with the barbarity of the Russians. That's how the book comes across.
Plus, ça change, Graham. That is what continues.
He's also very anti. Well, if you read this book, you'd be shocked. I mean, I knew, having read previous books and having done Russian history at university at Edinburgh.
Yes.
They're quite a tough, brutal nation throughout their history. But this book is it's just unbelievably bad. I mean, all their gratuitous violence the whole time is quite staggering. But he's also very, very anti-Bolshevik and anti-Lenin in this book, which again is a bit unbalanced because if you look at the Beevor, all the other sides in the Russian Revolution, the Russian Civil War, they were all equally unprincipled, all equally deceitful, all equally, dictatorial, all equally undemocratic, all equally violent. For some reason, he seems to blame Lenin for this whole situation. And as a man who's read a lot about Lenin in the past, there's no way you can blame the whole scenario on one man or one particular party. It was a whole gigantic mess on all sides. So far be it for me to disparage someone who's much better educated than me and is a top seller and a great historian, but so far I think he's going off track.
What would you put that down to, Graham?
Emotion. He's got emotionally involved in this book. I know that because of his.
Now that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, a historian. I mean, here's a generalization, but we're used to history books being more dispassionate than that, aren't we? That is, I'm not saying taking a neutral position, but to be written with dispassion is often more likely. And this is something that differs from writing a biography or an autobiography, or maybe looking at a controversial figure. This is an entire war that's being looked at, and the convention there would be to write in a dispassionate way.
Well, yeah, he's quite dispassionate in his much earlier book about the Spanish Civil War. I think what's happened is in his Arnhem book, which is his most recent book before Russia's Civil War, in Arnhem he's very, very negative about British generals and the top British officer class in the way that they led their troops to an inevitable slaughter in Operation Market Garden. Yeah. And he's clearly, when I talked to him on the phone when interviewing for that book, he was completely against Brexit, although he wouldn't say that on the record in the interview. No. And he's clearly got his own opinions on things. And he's clearly anti-war, as anybody right person would be.
Exactly.
So he's just let that general, well-intentioned feeling seep into his writing in this book. But I haven't read the whole thing, so perhaps it'll develop in a different way. Yeah.
Last thought, Graham. I went to the Everyman last night and took out a mortgage to go to the cinema. It's now so expensive. And we went to see
£17. Oh yeah, I've seen Tar.
You've seen Tar? Yeah, which in Yorkshire usually means thanks very much, but in a very brief way. So what I wanted to just in the last few minutes to reflect on is you can see a film and not enjoy it, but know that it's a really good film. And I kind of feel that Tar fell into that category.
Yeah, I don't totally agree, but I can see what you mean.
It was, well, I guess one did connect with the characters within it. I just thought it depicted the music world in a pretty bleak way overall. And,
but we saw the Stockhausen documentary then.
We did, and
we know how how the classical music world can work. We see how once you're at the apex of the classical music world, your ego can take over everything in your life,
and it does eat up other people, doesn't it? Around them, it absolutely does that. And also, we saw within the Stockhausen one as well, the sexual side of it as well, how that filtered into it very strongly, which it does in this. Well, in terms of relationships in this, it's not. So you enjoyed it more than I did?
I thought it was totally absorbing, fantastic acting.
Yes, it was
very good characterization, very good dialogue, and a good scenario. The only thing I had as the film got towards the end was, what point is this making? And it raised issues about gender, it raised issues about social media, it raised issues about culture wars. But at no point did it then address any of those issues. And then the film, I thought, are we supposed to think that the classical conductor played by Cate Blanchett, who's head of the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, are we supposed to think she's in some way admirable overall in her life choices and her obsession with music and her massive ego that is dedicated to that at the expense of everything else? Or are we supposed to think she was a monster? Now, I know that it's good to leave things open, but I didn't eventually work out what the point of the film was, except to be a good film.
I think that's a very fair assessment. One of the things that struck me that's interesting, that a Berlin conductor who is lesbian and has a child and led a Berlin orchestra has speculated that it would appear this story is rather too closely based on her, but not the side of the story where the points that you're making about whether the character is a monster or whatever. Obviously, she would completely detach and disassociate from that. And I think that's really why she's rather questioned the film, because people are putting two and two together and making trouble for her. That's not fair. What I did also wonder with that, Graham, was, were they masculine qualities? Were they the worst of male qualities that were being shown by the Lydia Tarr character? Or am I reading something into it that's not there?
When your mind listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.